But first up tonight, well, the spike in COVID cases in Victoria should not, let me repeat, should not derail the national strategy aimed at getting Australia's economy back on track. Now, through the idiocy of the Andrews government's Belt and Road initiative with China, Victoria has proven itself an island when it comes to the national interest. On that basis, and this is the unfortunate byproduct of having a state government that makes poor decisions, Victorians will probably be excluded from travelling interstate when the border restrictions are finally eased in a few weeks. Now, New South Wales, South Australia, Queensland and the NT will likely impose so-called travel bubbles, allowing travel between these states but banning Victorians because of the second wave of COVID cases in that state. Now, it makes sense. If we can ban international travel from certain countries, we certainly have the ability to ban interstate visitors. It's a bad outcome all round for the Andrews government. The Andrews government, of course, it sold its hardline approach to isolation and enforcing COVID protocols on the basis that there would be gain after the pain. Yet here we are, restrictions being eased everywhere except Victoria, where they're now being ramped up again. And don't forget, 3 times as many fines handed out in Victoria as in New South Wales, and 4 times as many fines handed out in Victoria as in Queensland. All because some people did the wrong thing, and all because authorities decided to let protests proceed despite the obvious community transmission risk. It's now up to states like New South Wales and Queensland to continue with their proposed roadmaps on easing restrictions and opening borders, despite the obvious threat from Victoria. It's the new normal. There will be sporadic outbreaks, but we must now remove restrictions. It was 16 days ago today that there were protests in Brisbane and around Queensland that effectively have resulted in no new cases. There are 3 active cases in Queensland now. 3 active cases. Isn't that evidence that we now need to ease restrictions completely in Queensland? There was no massive outbreak. It was as good a controlled experiment as you could imagine for easing the restrictions. Victoria needs to be isolated, yet again, but the rest of Australia should not be fearful and try to get back to business as usual as quickly as possible. It's time to unloosen the shackles.